380. Three, 8, 0. There is a name I love to hear, I love to sing as well. It sounds like music in my ear, the sweetest name on earth. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus, because he first loved me. It tells me of a Savior's love who died to set me free. It tells me of his precious blood, the sinner's perfect plea. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus, because he first loved me. It tells of one whose loving heart can fill my deepest woes, who any sorrow bears apart that none can bear below. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus, because he first loved me.
Please be turning to the 32nd Psalm. The 32nd Psalm, 11 verses. Blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man unto whom the Lord imputeth not iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no guile. When I kept silence, my bones waxed old through my roaring all the day long. For day and night thy hand was heavy upon me. My moisture is turned into the drought of summer. Selah. I acknowledged my sin unto thee, and my iniquity have I not hid. I said, I will confess my transgressions unto the Lord, and thou forgavest the iniquity of my sin. Selah. For this shall every one that is godly pray unto thee in the time when thou mayest be found. Surely in the floods of great waters they shall not come nigh unto him. Thou art my hiding place. Thou shalt preserve me from trouble. Thou shalt compass me about with songs of deliverance. Selah. I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eye. Be ye not as the horse, or as the mule, which have no understanding, who held in with bit and bridle, lest they come near unto thee. Many sorrows shall be to the wicked, but he that trusteth in the Lord, mercy shall compass him about. Be glad in the Lord, and rejoice, ye righteous, and shout for joy, all ye that are in heart. Let us pray. Son Jesus. We believe in Thee as the great God of this universe, who rules in the affairs of even the nations of men. And we pray, Father, as we come here in joining a beautiful Lord's Day, that we will rejoice in the Lord and Him alone, may we recognize that Thou art the one who receives the credit, and we give Thee the honor and glory. We pray for those who have gone through some very difficult times, the many who've gone through the valley of the shadow of death. Bless their lives. Help us to lean on one another. Help us to find that eternal reason that You give us to go on. We pray for those who are on beds of affliction, who are in trouble at this time. May You give them endurance. May they exercise their own right of prayer. And we pray, Father, that good things will come down the road. We pray as we enter this Bible study this morning that we'll have right spirit. We're hungering and thirsting for truth and righteousness. And we believe we will be filled. Bless every family. Help us to know that we may be small in number, but we're not small at heart. In love and understanding and trying to be Your people. Help us to succeed and give Thee the glory. For we pray in the name of Jesus. Amen. Last week we studied the first miracle that Jesus performed in His public ministry. Performed at a wedding feast. Jesus was invited to it, and His disciples. His mother was present there, and that wedding feast was a very, very interesting circumstance. You know, when you're invited to something, you really don't have to go. You have the choice whether to be there or not. And Jesus made that choice, and He attended that wedding feast. Almost up front, the need was presented that they were out of refreshment. What did Mary say? No wine. Fulfilled a renowned miracle that He took plain old water and made it into the best grape juice that was even recognized by those people. Why did you save the best to last? 6 water pots, 3 to 4 firkins each, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 gallons of refreshment was made. Let me just say this in conclusion and in passing. You will be absolutely shocked how many people through the last 50-some years have tried to use this miracle as a justification for drinking alcoholic beverages. It won't work. It doesn't fit. that Jesus would make that much fermented alcohol content wine, and then he would suggest in other places that no drunkard would go into heaven. Well, people say, well, Jesus was the gluttonous man and a winebibber. He was not no such a thing. That's what the Bible says. But who was it that was being quoted? That's what people said about Jesus. It wasn't true. He wasn't a gluttonous man. He wasn't a winebibber. He was the Son of the Most High God. He was the best man that ever walked the face of the earth. And best men don't get drunk. And best men don't overeat. That's what they said about him. That wasn't what he was. Today we want to go further. A second notable miracle in Mark chapter 2, also recorded in Matthew 9, very similar. We're going to look at Mark's rendering of this healing of a very, very helpless man. In Mark chapter 2, beginning in verse 1. And again he entered into Capernaum after some days, and it was noised that he was in the house. And straightway many were gathered together, insomuch that there was no room to receive them. No, not so much as about the door. And he preached the word unto them. And they come unto him, bringing one sick of the palsy, which was born of 4. And when they could not come nigh unto him for the press, they uncovered the roof where he was, and when they had broken it up, they let down the bed wherein the sick of the palsy lay. When Jesus saw their faith, he said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, thy sins be forgiven thee. But there were certain of the scribes sitting there, and reasoning in their hearts, Why doth this man thus speak blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God only? And immediately when Jesus perceived in his spirit that they so reasoned within themselves, he said unto them, Why reason ye these things in your hearts? Whether is it easier to say to the sick of the palsy, Thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, Arise and take up thy bed and walk? But that you may know the law, insomuch that they were all amazed and glorified God, saying, on this fashion. Jesus was able to heal to Jesus. That's the only way he could have been brought into his presence. He was helpless. Let's divide it up into several natural points. Christ, the healer. There's only one great physician. Many Old Testament references referred to Jesus in terms that maybe we do not recognize. And there are many illustrations, many shadows and types throughout the Old Testament that showed the great physician was coming. If you look at the characteristics of Jesus for a moment, he was the one that was doing the healing. On your outline, this is not copied from a book. This is an old sermon I'd preached years and years ago. And I just took that sermon outline and divided it out into natural points. The characteristic of Jesus, the healer, he is sympathetic and compassionate. He cared for them who could not come to him. He never turned a person away. He was not too busy. You remember the astounding phrase where Jesus wept over Jerusalem? Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that stonest the prophets. And he went on to say that they were, he would have taken them under his wing as a mother hen would have taken her chicks. But he said, you would not. Jesus was the perfect physician. He had the power. He had divine authority. Matthew 28:18, all power and authority has been given unto me in heaven and earth. He not only had the authority, he had the remedy. Different times phrases are used in the Gospels. He simply but gloriously sent his word and healed. In Mark 2, verse 2, our text, it said, and he preached the word unto them. Jesus is known as the best preacher that ever walked the face of the earth. He was the best man. He was the best example. He had the best truth you could ever want to hear. And if you dig this out like it is intended in Mark 2 and Matthew 9, Jesus was not necessarily illustrating that he could heal the sick. He pulled the cover back and he said it like it was. Son, thy sins be forgiven thee. Oh, they lambasted him for it. They picked at him. They shot him down. Jesus didn't come to make this world a better place to live. He didn't come just for the purpose of healing the sick and restoring the blind and the deaf. He worked deeper than that. He was after the sins of the human family. The remedy has always been the gospel, the truth. Romans 1:16, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. In James 1, verse 21, receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your soul. In John 5, Jesus said, search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life. Ye will not come to me. The truth, the scriptures, the gospel, the message that Jesus came was the answer for their problems. I notice another miracle in same department. In the 5th chapter of the Gospel of John,
He put him back on his feet. Here in this Mark chapter 2, Jesus was able to heal. Not only in this parable do we read of Jesus, who was the healer, but we read about the helpless. I am not a medical degreed person. I study some medical books that I've got over at the house, but I'm not qualified to be a medical doctor and don't pretend to be one. But I do notice those who are having a problem of voluntary motion. Most of us Burns boys are pretty big, scrapping fellas. My brother was 235, played on the front line in the varsity squad in football. I had a cousin, Charles. There's nobody in that family left alive now. Every one of them. Mom, dad, all the brothers and sisters are gone. Charles was a robust, big man. You know what happened to him? Disease. His arms were limp by his side. He couldn't help himself. I remember watching a football game one night. Charles was playing. This old opposing team fella come charging down the line. Charles grabbed him in a bear hug and it stopped him dead. And he took him to the turf. It's sad what happens to the human family because of problems and sickness. The representative man here, a sinner with a paralyzed soul. Have you wondered why people who are paralyzed with sin seem not to have any time for Christ, for the truth? When Jesus said that in John 5 about search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, for there they'll testify of me, and you will not come to me that you might have life. Have you ever stopped to think why people will not come to Christ? Why don't they come? A lot of reasons. The suitcase of sin keeps a whole lot of people from coming to Jesus. Back in younger days, we were involved in youth programs, Bible camps, and we're up to our ears in activities with young people all the time, and we would give object lessons. In front of all these children, I would take a suitcase in one hand and another suitcase in the other hand and teach the lesson, are you packing your suitcase to heaven, or are you packing your suitcase to hell? And you open up each suitcase one at a time. And you show in the suitcase to hell a liquor bottle. Oh, I got Frank with the kids. Pack of cigarettes. A lot of people think that's a matter of opinion. If you can read and you stop and see the results of those who smoke, they got a problem. A pack of cards. Anything that would suggest wickedness and vice and wrong. And you know what a packed suitcase to hell will do? It'll slap a Bible shut so fast it'll make your head swim.
wise enough and practical enough trying to get them to see with them.
What did they face when they got to where Jesus was? People had pressed around the house and the door. There was no way possible because of so many people standing around, going to get the witness of Jesus and were getting to listen to him. They were close to that song. No, not. What they do? They're told to look back. You know what's impossible? Well, I'm always on roofs in our country. Here's the way you come on, take it. You know what roofs were made out of in those days? Straw, thatch, something that could be pulled back. And that's all a problem. So what to do? Just pull it back. These four men had some tremendous characteristics. They had a love for the everyday man then they had tremendous faith in Jesus as the Peter. And you notice what they did. They worked together. You didn't have one man wanting his ego that he's better than anybody else. The four of them worked together. One did. We accomplished. They were all more than we found in the presence of Jesus. They were determined to do it in spite of every reason why they couldn't. So these four men succeeded. So I have life about this application. Here's Jesus the leader inside, and we do. Here's four men who had picked it up. Others on the cot on the bed had but they were determined to get him into the presence of Jesus. And Jesus saw their faith, and he blessed them with new feet. Did you notice something? Those men that work together and got their friends in the presence of Jesus. His fault. They were in the presence of Jesus too. I'm going to say that and immediately like the apostle said, greater than some of us have not come to the presence of Jesus, or we have not had anybody else in the presence of Jesus. And it's a natural thing to accomplish. But when we take somebody else in the presence of Jesus, we get there ourselves. We get ourselves. They found another group of people, and it was hard to hinder
Did you notice? They didn't, but they did. The passive hinderers who had pressed around the house and around the door, they did not allow any space for somebody else to come in. The passive hinderers, the onlookers, the curious people who were in the way. I hope and pray that we would never hinder somebody else's coming to Jesus. But there's been many a husband who stood in the way of his wife. There's been many a wife that stood in the way of her husband. Many grandparents and parents stand in the way of their children coming to Christ because they haven't come to Christ. They stand in the way. You want a direct word straight out of the text of the Bible for it? Matthew 23, verse 13. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. I don't need no explanation. Jesus knew there was people who would stand in the way of other people coming to him. And he used straight, hard words. Ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. They didn't mean to. They were interested. They were listening to what Jesus had to say. That here was a man who was helplessly approaching death. And what did these 4 men have to do? Go over their head. Isn't that an interesting expression? Did you ever want something so bad that you had to go over somebody's head to get it? Do I need to be point blank specific? People do when you go over their head to get what you want. They get mad at you. Well, why'd you do that? Why did you call the office up the country? They didn't like it. You go over their head. Sometimes you have to go over their head. Sometimes you have to, what did they do? They circumnavigated the press around the door, and they went to where they could get into his presence. Did you have to walk around somebody in the particular family you were dealing with to try to win somebody to Jesus? Oh, it happens all the time. And if you don't think the devil will fight low, when you get serious about trying to win somebody to Jesus, he'll pull every punch in the world. He'll fight below the belt. He'll scream. He'll forecast murder. He will rant. He will rave. He will do everything in his power to stop you getting the truth to that person. Over and over and over again. And we've seen it happen. But you do it anyway. Because the man's soul is at stake. And they brought him into the presence of Jesus. You see, you've got the passive hinderers, those who don't really to be in a place of hindrance, but they're there anyway. Power to while he was here on earth, and he did, and he practiced it while he was here on earth. The last line down at the bottom. God gets in a hurry to forgive sin. In the story of the prodigal son, instance, he came to himself. He's going back home to his father's house. Wonder why his father saw him. It's far away. He was looking for him. He was hoping he'd come back home. And when he saw him in the distance, what did the father do? Go run and hide in the back room so he couldn't find him? No, he took off on a run. He ran to him. God gets in a hurry to forgive people. Too many people have totally misapplied the story of the prodigal son. He was already a son. He was already a member of the family. That's not what you do to become a Christian. That's what a son does when he comes home. He admits his wrong, and he comes to his father on bended heart and knees, and he makes the confession, and he wants to be considered as a hired servant. That father wasn't about to let him be a hired servant. They killed the fatted calf. They put a ring on his hand, a cloak around him. He forgave him. He put him right back in where he had left. Let's be sure that we understand what's going on here. Lord willing, we'll go further next Sunday. Time's gone. I hope you'll study this. Jesus healed the paralytic born of 4. Thank you.